morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 14th day of May 2025. Welcome to our show today. So today we have on at 9 o'clock Liberty Essentials with Bill Mohr, Ralph the IT guy, and Karen the Riveter. And then at 10 o'clock, Greg Martini will be on again, and we're talking about notices. And I'm really kind of excited today, but I had to start the day out to tell you what happened today. I wrote a post and I did a video. First of all, I wrote the post on Telegram, and then I went to post it on X. And guess what? It was denied. It was denied, failure to post. I tried to do it twice. It would not post. They are definitely censoring. And I got a whole file of these things that they refuse to let me post on X, etc. And so finally, I did a screenshot of part of it and put it up there. And then it finally went through. However, they're censoring. They're still censoring. And I think we can't underestimate the fact that all of these platforms are censoring. Good thing for you, you're here on Brandenburg News Network, and we don't censor anything. This is a totally non-censorship platform. If you don't like what people say, you're going to have to go somewhere else, because we uphold people's right to say whatever they want to say, and that's an important part in the civil discourse. And then I did a video on TikTok, and guess what? It's under review. However, I was able to save it, and I put it up on Telegram and on X. Made the cut on both of those, but I was talking about DTE energy and what's going on. I'm going to bring on my guests, and we're going to start it out right there. Morning, guys. How you doing?
Morning.
Good morning.
So we're all back in our places with bright, shiny faces. This is amazing. So I wanted to start this out, and welcome back, Karen. I hope you had a good travel time. Same, you were here last week, Bill, but everybody's been kind of here, there, and everywhere. So anyhow, I'm going to read you the post and let you know kind of what's going on here. DTE proposed energy rate increase, clean energy scam, and what it is nothing but money laundering. This is about changes to the electric grid, in their own words. DTE filed for a $574.1 million electric rate increase on April 23, 2025. It is the second largest request to take effect February 24, 2026. This would raise residential bills by 11.1%. 11.1%. The purpose is to fund grid reliability improvements, aiming to reduce outages by 30%, restore faster service by 2029. But remember, this is about the electric grid and the electric upgrades to DTE energy, which is gas, right? So DTE proposed a 10.75 return on equity, up from 9.9%. This is all about the shareholders. And while they're bleeding out the residents of Michigan, this is really concerning. So that what I found is that the executives are reported to are earning $10 million is what their salaries are coming in at. And they will get a $2 million raise, which puts the top executive at $12 million for Michigan. Michigan pays the highest amount for energy costs in the Midwest. And now the DNR, which I'm fighting like a little badger, and they're going to get sued. Okay, we're working on this right now, is trying to destroy the dams in Michigan, which, let's go back to this, have the potential to produce clean and relatively free energy, but they're destroying the dams and the food supply. I'm going to tell you what, this is not going to end well for them, because I think that there's a couple of other things in Michigan that I know quite a bit about, including destroying the Palisades nuclear plant and what's behind that and who's behind that and why they're behind that. I know why they're doing this. And you know what? Those people are probably going to get sued too. In fact, it's on my list for what they've done to the state of Michigan. And so I'm kind of looking at this as like a Robin Hood scenario in fighting these people, because they've all decided to steal our resources, us, take whatever it is that we own and put it in it's all about me basket, okay? Just like what they did with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, which started out as a beneficiary trust, and through Snyder, the Republican rhino globalist hack, turned this into a mutual fund and stole it from the people of Michigan. Same thing's happening with energy. Nobody's talking about this. Granholm, also a POS governor we had, deep state globalist who made a $1.6 million gain on a stock trade, who doesn't even know how many barrels of oil we use or we produce in a year, and as the Secretary of Energy. I'm going to tell you what, this is called unqualified, not only unqualified, but criminal. I'm going to put out more stuff on this DTE nonsense. And I found out this week that I was just completely going totally boss level sick of your shit on these people for what they were doing with the geese. And they were going to round up the geese in Michigan and gas them. This week, we got something that came out that said, oh, because of public outcry, they decided not to round up the geese and gas the geese. So we're going to have to stand together to this very small amount of people that are running the thug criminal network, money laundering, stealing our stuff here in Michigan. And we're going to have to stand together, and we're going to have to get off politics. You have to leave politics alone, because that's another one that needs to be sued, both the Republican and the Democrat parties, because they've taken foreign money. That makes them an absolute threat to this nation. Well, there's my opening thing here for this morning, because I'm like sick of everybody. I hate everybody at this moment in time in the office. And God forgive me, but I think he doesn't like them either at this point, you know?
Well, it was a letter from the Senate to the DNR that caused them to change their mind about the geese.
And that's the problem of letting government start to regulate individual things like that, especially when it comes to lands or natural resources and such like that. There's a place for that. However, once you start allowing governments to regulate that, and I don't even like calling it natural resources, right? They're more the people's resources. They're like with state lands, right? The state has no business owning lands.
But Bill, they've taken over 4.6 million acres that we have and claimed all the mineral and logging rights.
Yep.
Yep. But it's the Department of Natural Resources. I just call them destroy, neglect, and raid or ravage.
And that's the problem. They claim ownership of something, but you look in the early days of this in the country when we were expanding out west, it was the people who would own the land, and the governments would actually give the land to the people, because it was understood then that if the people did not own the property, that there would come nothing of it. There was no security in that. And now that we've allowed the states to claim state land or natural reserves owned by the government and funded by everybody, and most of them you still have to pay to get into, like the state parks and such. And not only that, but there's a lot of them that are restricted from entry for the people, right? I mean, look at this a long way around. If the state wants to claim ownership of the land and the people want to allow it, whose land actually is it? Right?
Well, they're denying access to. When I went up to Gladwin week before last, and there's some great patriots up there that I'm fighting with, which is fantastic. I'm helping them out a little bit, and we're working together on something, and this is statewide, because I have 3 groups now that have wanted me to step in and kind of help with their local pilfering or plundering that's happening. They're literally clear cutting. When I was up at Camp Grayling, and like you guys all know, I spent a couple hours in the officers club there going through documents and such. They're clear cutting the north of Michigan. They're not even doing a good job. If you go down 127 up there and see how they've literally, if we did a clearing job like this, we would not only be charged with a crime, not get paid, but we'd be charged with a crime. They're breaking trees off and just leaving all of this stuff lay. It's an eyesore next to the highway. And this is just the highway. Drive up 127 and get up there north by Houghton Lake. Get up north where you're getting up close to Houghton Lake, and see what they're doing along all these highways. Stumps, broken off. They're not even cutting them. It's like they're just running over them and leaving everything sit there. I don't think that Michigan, which our largest industry has been tourism, I don't think it's going to work well. I think what they're doing is they're also piling up wood in front of the trails and denying access for people to use the trails. And I can tell you why. Right now, we're focused on Nestle, which is owned by Coca-Cola, which the executive now is heading up the World Economic Forum. But you know what? I'm going to tell you, as a person that's worked in the energy sector for many years, we have so much gas and oil, and this is what they do, is they come in to sell people a different agenda. They're going to try to sell and buy the mineral rights from people that own the property for natural gas. But what they're not telling people is they're really after the crude and the petroleum, where the big money is underneath. So they sell them these cheap paper leases so that they can rob them of the real resources below it and make, if they can get the people off the land for recreation, they can do whatever they want because nobody's looking at what they're doing. And that's your DNR. They're a bunch of frauds. They're criminal. They should all of them be charged with treason. Every single person within that whole department, from top to bottom, they need to be charged.
Well, remember, the DNR has no constitutional authority to exist. It's only mentioned once in our Michigan state constitution. I don't know about the other states.
Twice,
they probably have their own. But it actually has no authorities that have been given to it. And here's the kicker, right? A lot of people claim that it exists because the legislature has created it and given it its authority, which there are provisions for other government entities in the Constitution for the legislature to grant authorities to, right? However, think about it. Who in the legislature has the authority to take or remove anything from public land or from private land, right? We can get into that too. None of them have that authority. So how can they delegate that authority to somebody else?
Bingo.
Yeah, and it's under Whitmer, and so she's made that as one of her little Gestapo groups to weaponize against the state.
And let's move that one step back, because I was thinking about this earlier this week as well. If the legislature doesn't have that authority, we know the DNR doesn't have that authority. So if the legislature doesn't have that authority, well, who gave the legislature authority? The people have, right? Through their constitution. Now, do the people have the authority to take or remove from public or private property, except their own? Do they have that authority to delegate to the legislature? Because they do not either. I cannot go over to Ralph's property and say, hey, there's a coal mine underneath your property, right? Or there's some sort of other resource. But narrow this way down. It says, there's a rock in your driveway that I really like that I'm just going to come take. Right? Do I have that authority to go onto Ralph's property and remove something from it, or to remove him from it? I do not. Nor do any of my neighbors, nor do any of my kinsmen or my countrymen have that authority over somebody else's property.
Right.
So who delegated this authority to anybody in the central government? None of us have that authority, so they cannot access it.
So they're thieves. They're they're thieves. They're cheats. They're liars. And the only reason why they get away with it is because we're allowing them to get away with it, because nobody stands up. And I can tell you, like with the last lawsuit to change the name, as the, excuse me, guys, got a little bit of cold, as the chairman of the U.S. Taxpayers Party, which is the Constitution Party in Michigan, which for 2 decades we've been trying to change our name. And the obstructionist government we have here in Michigan is, there's no reason for them not to do it. And they just decided, well, we don't have a policy, so we're not going to do it. If you don't have a policy, then you have to do it. You don't just get to say no. And it is unbelievable how intimidating they try to be. They sent me a 40-page response from their little attorneys on training wheels through the Attorney General's office. You can just see them on their little monkey bikes. They put these stupid cases forward. They changed documents. Therefore, they falsified documents. They lied that they contacted me about something. They did not. And on and on. And it's like, probably anybody else would have looked at that and said, oh no, I don't know what to do. And thankfully, myself and smart people around me too, who actually know what's going on here, said, yeah, now guess what? You're next to be sued. Keep it up, people, because some of us are not going to back down on this. And we don't care what we lose. That's the point where I see why people stop fighting, is they're afraid they're going to lose something. They're going to lose their businesses. Oh, that's why businesses shut down. Got to listen to the Gestapo. We're going to lose our income. Oh no, I guess we better deploy the clot shots. We might lose our income or do these other unconstitutional. We might get people within an organization or a cult like the Republican and Democrat parties. They are a cult. We might get ostracized from this group of people who are breaking the law. Oh no, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? And, our family might not like us for what we're saying. Our friends might not like us for what we're saying. And to them, they're like, who cares what God says? Everybody else around me is more important than what God says. And God tells you to do something that's the right thing. The rest of it should disappear before your eyes and say, God says it, I'm going to do it.
Yep. Everybody gets focused on their material possessions and or their convenience. The decadence follows luxury, right? The decaying of a nation or the decaying of a people always comes immediately after they fall into luxury. That was one of the big warnings that God gave to his people, is that if you fall into prosperity, don't forget your God, because that's a tendency of man to look around and say, well, look at everything we've done. Look at everything that we have now. We have no need for anything else, right? You fall into luxury, the next step is decay. Almost every time it follows. And that's to the point, we are here in this country. The generation that came through the 50s and 60s, called the boomer generation, apparently they still remembered to have children back then to replace themselves. We can't even get that right nowadays. But that generation fell into a lot of luxury. They fell into a ton of conveniences, right? And the next generation now is paying that price because we now have to, for all practical purposes, we are now refunding the amounts that, how should I word that? Basically, we're paying for what they allowed the government to steal, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to read something, and this is important for everybody to remember. Remember, the Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 23, reserves all rights, not some of the rights, not thinking of rights, but all rights, not explicitly covered by the Constitution or Michigan law for the citizens, stating that the enumeration of certain rights does not deny or disparage others retained by the people. So guess what? Every single one of them that have written this pretended legislation in Michigan, they're guilty. They're guilty. And it's guilty of treason. This is not a small crime. This is short, drop, sudden, stop kind of stuff.
And that's, the people have got to get it through their heads. We don't have constitutional rights here in America or in any of the states. You have zero constitutional rights, right? They cannot grant them. They cannot take them away. This was the big deal that the conservative groups missed when they passed the what was that? The Reproductive Freedom for All, right? When they did the act and the constitutional amendment, they cannot do that. The Constitution is only there to tell the government you are not allowed to touch these specific rights, right? And then given the clause that all others are retained by the people as well. If we didn't grant them the authority to do it, then it's the people's right to take care of it. And that's where they miss it. I mean, everybody has to start talking God-given rights, right? And some people will even mention it. They'll talk about it, and then they'll go right back and say, yeah, these constitutional rights are what we're here to. No. You have to stop that nonsense. There has never been any such thing in this nation. Our rights are granted to us from our Creator from birth. That means there is no government that can take them away. And I would even argue that every government in this entire earth cannot take them away. They're not just granted to Americans, they're granted to all mankind.
Well, and here's the next step to talk about here too, is that I got in a great conversation yesterday on the rights. I was on my way to get my bees. I got 6 beehives set up yesterday. I was so excited about them, getting the new hives up and running in my little beeatorium and such. And so I'm pretty excited about this. But we got in the discussion of what happens, since we all know several people that are working on free energy, and I have a huge belief that we're going to get something that's going to obsolete some of these things. I really do. I think it's coming. People are working on hydrogen cells. They're working on all sorts of things out there. And guess what? Sucks to be you guys, bad guys, because guess what? You can't control that. They're going to try. But if you decentralize, it's all about decentralization. We got talking about this. What happens if we end up, let's just say, eliminating 90%, because it's my opinion that 90% of the federal government needs to go into nullification, and the same thing for the states. Each state needs to nullify about 90% of their pretended legislation that they never had the right to do in the first place. Okay? My first act, if I were ever to run and get voted in as governor, because I'm still protesting the 2022 election, so hopefully we'll go back and write that, and I can go in under the right terms and conditions, is that we need to order like a truckload of pens and start scratch. You know, these things need to be nullified. And you know what? This is no good. Tear it up. You remember Pelosi tearing up the thing in Congress? We're just going to go, nope. You know, put a Pelosi
Redact.
Yeah, put a Pelosi sticker on it and say, you did it. We're going to do it too. You know? So what are we going to do going forward to helping people get purpose to their lives, since they've decided to take God out of our society and ruin families, and people don't know how to get along or talk or have civil discourse and all that sort of thing? We got a lot of work to do right now just on the spiritual and the spiritual bankruptcy of this nation and the world.
Well, and on the note too of the energy decentralization thing, that's one place where, like, I am not at all opposed to electric stuff. Electric cars, not a terrible idea. The lithium-ion batteries, that's kind of a lousy idea. There's much better technologies than that for durability, where you can have a vehicle that doesn't basically immediately start depreciating due to battery life. And if you had something like that, as long as you have local ability to generate electricity, then great. You've got an interchange medium where you can generate your own electricity using multiple different sources. Great idea. The problem comes in when you have a reliance on the grid. And that's something that the Amish are absolutely right in their thinking on that, in my opinion, is the dependence on the grid, the dependence on some other large entity is one of the biggest problems there. And with the stuff that DTE is trying to do there, and the stuff that, you've got DTE as one natural monopoly in one area, and you've got Consumers Energy that's considered a natural monopoly in another area. But between the two of them, trying to get it forces you into a situation where you're dependent on one private company, basically, to the exclusion of all other energy sources. Whether they're supplying electric, they're supplying gas, or in some cases, they're supplying both.
Hey, the chats are going absolutely nuts this morning. I'm going to call people out. Morning, Sean. Morning, Al. Morning, Denise and Leb and Curtis. Good to see you guys all, and keep posting. You guys have got some great posts.
I would like to go back to what Bill was saying about the Constitution, because I think he's spot on in that, and I think that is one of the things that we need to keep keep up talking about with regards to proper language use, like we are not a democracy, for example. That is also not a bunch of amendments to the Constitution, which give us our rights. That is a Bill of Articles. And if you look at the original documentation, it doesn't say First Amendment to the Constitution. It says Bill of Articles. And so it is the first is called a bill, not an amendment. You can't amend the Constitution to give rights when the Constitution isn't about the rights of the people. Well, it protects the rights from now, somebody may disagree with me. Maybe somebody's smarter than I am on this. But if the Constitution is about restricting the government and it is all about the government, it has nothing to do with the sovereignty of the people. And that's why they had two different documents. We call them amendments, but I think that's the wrong terminology. And that's why I say 2A, to me, it's second article. It's not an amendment. Bill, would you like to tell me if I'm wrong or?
No, I think you're right in your analytics there. The Bill of Rights, right, was granted by its name, but you're correct in saying that it was all set up in articles, right? Article the first, article the second, article the third, so on and so forth, and it was the addition to the Constitution from the states because they had seen what had just happened with the tyrant king that they threw off, and those were the specifics of what they had to deal with and what the king was usurping authority on and trying to take away from the people at the time. So the states wanted to make sure that the future government that was being set up could not do those same things, right? Yet a lot of people allow them to continue doing. So one of the big things, we say it all the time. There's tons of people that say it when you say do not comply, right? It goes so much farther than that because you can not comply and be perfectly fine. Yes. However, does that put pressure on them to stop it or to not try it again in the future? It really doesn't. We saw that happen in 2020, 21, and 22 specifically. There were a lot of people that didn't comply with the illegal mandates that were coming down from the federal and state heads of states and departments. However, what do we see them doing continually? Right? They continually push the same narrative. They haven't backed off. They just have a temporary stop on what was going on. Right? You can see that with the bioweapons that they've been injecting into people as well. They're still pushing the narrative, though they're not claiming that they mandate it. Right? They're still pushing the narrative, and sometime in the future they will do the exact same thing again, but they will double down on it because they saw that that the majority of people would not fight back. Whether they would comply or not is irrelevant, but they wouldn't fight back. Right?
Yes.
Do you feel like we're dealing with a bunch of 3-year-olds that are sitting in these seats as public functionaries? I do. You know, it's like, Mom, I want a cookie. Mom, I want a cookie. Mom, I want a cookie. And how many parents give in to those childish 3-year-old things because they're sick of listening to it? They just wear us down.
Well, and as far too as being a stickler for the correct terminology on things, I kind of take objection to saying that we are a republic because we are supposed to be a republic, but there are so many of the things that were in the Constitution as drafted to make this a true, like, hierarchical republic that we're now ignoring in favor of turning it into closer and closer to pure democracy, that it really short circuits a lot of those protections that we used to have, like the Senate not being directly elected, the president not being directly elected. You know, there's so much of this that to a certain extent, to call it a democracy is kind of, it's become more and more true And so to a certain extent, it's kind of like, yeah, kind of a derogatory word for what we currently have in my mind, because we've lost that pure republic.
Well, yes, and this we kind of touched on it a little bit before the show started about how I think Trump, one of the most important aspects of Trump, and when I say Trump, I don't mean the man Donald J. Trump. I mean the image, the representational aspect of Trump. He is there to break through that last wall for us, because we could sit at home and go, well, I disagree with this, but what is the action necessary, and can we successfully break through on that? So we have a lot of people like Donna's guest the other day, which is what prompted that conversation. Yesterday, I was listening to him this morning, trying to catch up. He was talking about taking action via FOIAs and then actively disagreeing with this local de facto government, which answers the FOIA by declaring they are, in fact, de facto. They do not have the right to take the actions that they have. Well, if they continue acting on that, you have to take action. It is the right, it is the duty of the people to take that action. He's trying to show that there are ways to do that. Donna is showing that there are ways to do that. John Tater is showing there's ways to do that. But you have these isolated little circumstances where people are fighting actively, but there's not a lot of public attention brought to those cases and the successful resolution of that. And I think part of that is they get to a certain point and then they either don't know how, or there's a lack of willingness, or they are attacked to the point that they cannot, or there is some kind of barrier that prevents them from being successful because, in part, the public as a whole doesn't see and doesn't have the willingness to move forward into the next step. Trump is here to break through that, I think. So you have a public that is more educated now. What does democracy really mean? What is representational republic? Oh, wait a minute. We're not supposed to elect the Senate and the president the way we've been doing that. We have to be educated and see this stuff. But then at the same time, like I just posted this morning, we have to sometimes have an effect that's personal, like the no tax on tips thing that Trump was talking about. It's not about waitresses. Trump wants people to talk about the fact that nobody should be taxed this way. And it may take a personal effect on an inequality between a busboy and a waitress working for the same business and making a very different type of income because one's being taxed and one isn't. For them to go, I'm personally affected. Now I have the anger for change and I'm willing to do the next step. And what is it besides just sitting at home or whining to your friends or posting on social media that's going to affect that change? Then they have to look for the answer. But at some point they run up against a barrier, whether it's a comfort level, whether it's fear that the government perpetuates, or whether it's an actual some kind of wall in the system that prevents them from being successful. I think we're reaching a point where that switch is going to flip and we're going to all of a sudden see a lot of people being successful and a lot of people following that path.
Well, I think too, add to this, I think we've got a lot of NPCs out there who just, mumble through life and they never really have any purpose. And if you don't have any purpose and you don't have, I'm going to just say it, if you don't have God in your life, you don't have a higher purpose and say, this is all we have. So I'm just going to, what's the point? Well, the point is that you don't fight for just yourself. And when you look at all those things with people doing things because they have personal hurt, and now it's become personal, what the heck happened? fighting for each other when each other's rights
Yes.
are being that's the purpose. The purpose isn't if you fight for yourself. I've been asked this many times when I've spoken like to universities and such about success in business and what I've done and such. They're like, how is it that you've done all these things and why are you successful? And you know what my answer is every single time? Because I don't do anything for myself in that regard.
Right.
If you do something for yourself, I can guarantee you're going to get up in the morning and you're going to go, you know what? Yeah, I had this planned. I really should work on this, but I'm going to go play golf or I'm going to go do something else and screw around, really. But if you get up every morning and you have a higher purpose to change things, like for me, I want every single minute of my life to count. And, you know, whatever I do, I want it to count. I want it to be productive. And it's for the people that I love. Because quite honestly, there are things that each of us are better at than the people around us. Every single one of us can say that because of the gifts that God gives us. And I know if I fall down and don't do those things that God has gifted me to do, the people around me will suffer the lack of that attribute. And it goes the same thing for everyone. If anyone wastes the time, decides to sit down and waste those gifts that God has given them because they're too focused on immediate gratification crap that affects them personally, you have literally spit in the face of God because you've wasted those gifts. Those gifts are never given to us for ourselves. It's only to help at large the people and the people around us. And if you don't use them in the right way, I will guarantee you God will take them away from you.
You should
why should
snippet out what you just said and put it in a video for later.
It's true.
I mean that.
I literally have coached so many people on this, and it's like, but it's the truth. But thank you, Karen. Go ahead, Ralph.
But why should I fight for them? They're just the trade unionists. It'll never affect me.
Trade union is run. The unions. Do you guys know who runs the union? Do you guys actually really understand the significance of things behind us?
Well, I wasn't quite going for the specifics so much as referencing the poem, but yeah.
Sorry, I went into
I'm
detail.
just laughing because he always knows. He always knows when to sprinkle stuff like that in there.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It's like, who runs the union? Do you really know who runs the union? Freaking the bankers are running the unions. And you know what? I have, it's like, this is all about money. Ask me. I was involved in the Central States Teamsters nonsense where they looted the pensions. And they did that ERISA Act, Employment Retirement Act, that came out. I didn't quote it exactly, but you know what I mean. In 1972, 73. And what they did wrong is it's the same thing as this Axe My Tax crap, which is already in there. They're going to add more legislation to try to get rid of property taxes. All right, you fools that are behind this, it's already there. You don't fix it by adding more legislation. You know?
Here's one of the things that goes right along with that. And Karen kind of touched into that as well. If we want to get the people involved, right? Hosea 4:6 is a common verse everybody should know, is that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get the people involved, you have to give them the tools that they need to understand the times, right?
Yeah.
No less in the Old Testament than the sons of Issachar knew the times, right? They understood what was going on. The thing that's missing is that the people like to focus on all of these little laws or pretended legislation that comes out, right? They like to focus on all the little details and then try to piece a whole puzzle together, right? That's not the way we as Americans should be acting, right? The Constitution established the government. Everybody should understand that. If you don't, then you need to go back and learn some history before you can even continue on this conversation.
Step one, read it.
Yes. If the people understood the Constitution, right, and everything you see coming out of any government agency or government head, if you take that and compare it to the Constitution, you will have known if it fits or not. You will have known if it's right or not, right? Instead of trying to take all the little pieces and build a puzzle, why not take the puzzle and then not put the pieces in that don't fit? Okay. And that's one thing Karen, specifically that I argue with Trump. You know, you had just mentioned the no tax on tips thing, right? With the thought process that it engages people, it points them to the fact that there's something affecting them and that they need to start paying attention, right? If the people were pointed to the Constitution, right, we would understand that the federal government has no authority to directly tax an individual.
Right. Your taxes would be gone, guys. All
They've-
the taxes that they're doing are money grabs.
They've
They
never
are
been
off
given
the
that
rails.
authority.
Right.
And when you point them to that, when people start talking about no tax on tips, that's where I immediately went, is that, wait a minute, you don't have the right to tax me on anything here, right? Let alone tips. Why talk about the little puzzle pieces? I want to talk about the puzzle, right? I want to get rid of all this stuff that's covering up the main design of the puzzle, that's polluted its beauty, right? Known as the Constitution. And mainly because they swore an oath to it, right? If we're talking about somebody that didn't swear that oath, yeah, we can talk about the little issues, but they swore an oath to it. So to talk about anything other than that is outside of their authority, right?
Well, let's go one step further. Any person that took a payment within our government for any type of salary, that's agreeing to the terms and conditions. That means if every one of these people in the entire government, I don't care if it's the person that maintains the copy machine, right? Doesn't make any difference to me. Every single one of them, if they took payment from within our government, they just agreed to the terms and conditions, and they have agreed to the oath, to the Constitution. They're all illegal.
Well, all employees under government are required to swear by the same oath.
Right.
That was the big issue back a few years ago when we were going after the health department officials, because almost all of them did not take the oath. Therefore, besides the fact that they're a de facto department anyway and they don't exist, besides that fact, they didn't swear that oath, so they didn't even hold to their pretended legislation they put up.
Well, look at this. We've tried to FOIA the oaths of office or get the oaths of office of these people, and so many of them don't even have a signed oath. It's like, sorry, you're bad. You took the money and you took the salary. You just agreed to the terms of the contract.
Well, and I would argue too that really the premise of direct taxes on the citizenry is no different than eminent domain. And according to the Constitution, it is supposed to be if the government takes personal property from you under eminent domain, they are allowed to do that provided you're compensated. And in this case, the property that they're taking is your income.
Ooh, Ralph, that's another lawsuit right there. I can see this one coming. I got a list, guys. You should see this list. It's like, fine, we're going to do this thing. I'm so sick of it. It's like, go big or go home time.
How is it different? You've got eminent domain on our property by property tax, where they are taking a portion of the value of your property every year. You have eminent domain on your income, where they are taking a portion of your income out of every paycheck, that income that you rightfully earned.
I would like to be reimbursed with the value of their current gold, please.
Yes.
I'd like to be reimbursed for all the money that we have peed down a rat hole in these universities that have literally promised people an education and sent them out dumber than a rock, can't even do a checkbook, balance a checkbook, let alone be able to have the life skills that they need to live. I think we should claw all that back. And how much money has been money laundered through these universities through X, Y, and Z. I mean, this is incredible. When you look at how they do, how many building projects have you seen through education? They shut us down during COVID. Almost every school system in the state of Michigan used the COVID money to do building projects. I want to know who got the contracts. We were in a shutdown. The shutdown was, yay, free money. Let's start building. And their little friends who got the contracts on this. Go right back to the education disaster system. That's one of the first things that needs to be pulled back into compliance.
Hard to argue that it's an education system when so many of the people that graduate can't actually even pass a literacy test.
Oh, but we don't want to hurt their fee wings.
Well, here we go again. We're coming back around in a loop because we're talking about education and the importance of it. And we're also talking about how the government is not properly educating, because then you would understand the Constitution, you would comprehend the term eminent domain and what that means, because I bet half your audience just went, what? When Ralph said what he said. And how many ways has the government stolen from you? You can really break it down very, very simply. And like we started earlier, when Bill was talking about the Constitution, it very, very basic form. But you know, eminent domain, that's a term that's a little bit more complicated. What did that mean at the time? What was the definition? I could look it up in Noah's dictionary and probably get a better comprehension of what they meant back then as the same now.
It's pretty well defined even right in the Constitution. You don't even need to know the term if you read that.
But still there's a comprehension aspect of it that we are lacking because we don't have the ability to wrap our heads around it because the government hasn't taught us how to think or allowed us to. That's what I'm kind of getting at. But a lot of it is very simple. Government theft. That's a very simple concept.
Let me give you a couple words to that. How about civil forfeiture and how they've messed with civil forfeiture and the DNR is doing it. You know, the DNR doesn't have to have a warrant. They can accuse you of anything without any evidence. Take your land and your stuff, and you have to sue them to get it back.
Oh, but civil forfeiture, it's not the lawsuit is not against you. It's against the money itself. And therefore, the money has personhood.
Yep. And the money has to sue for its own release. It's ridiculous. And the police departments, which are nothing more than policy enforcers, they're not constitutional. The only ones that are the sheriffs. They'll go through civil forfeiture, take your stuff, and buy margarita machines with this. I'm telling you, there's cases out there with it.
Well, remember when everybody regarding that, remember when there was a big hype in the mid to late 90s with the police going in and removing drug dealers, right? And they still do TV shows on it, right? But one of the big things that people were praising is that the police would confiscate all of the property from these dealers that I'm going to say it, most of them were, what's the word? They were set up in that way. I've seen that firsthand. But anyway, people were praising the officers for confiscating the dealer's property, but not just confiscating it, but putting it to police use and then bragging about it, where they would actually brand on the side of these cars that this property was taken from a drug dealer, right? Oh, I'm all for if you want to remove drug dealers, you know, people that are a menace to society in that regard, absolutely. But did they have the right to take property and make it part of their department and use it?
Yeah, guys, I mean, if you can see the whole thing, this is like total piracy. It's like pirates. I'm going to take your stuff. That's what they're engaged in. I'm going to take your stuff, your taxes. I'm going to take your money. I'm going to take your land.
Well, and look at, the inventory taxes. That right there is pretty much a nearly direct eminent domain. I mean, it fits pretty much almost all of the conditions of eminent domain. You're taxed based on the value of the things that your business owns or that you as a person own. If you look it up in the governmental systems, they file it under personal property, even if it is a corporation person that owns it. that might be an LLC where it's one person. It might be a partnership. It might be a huge corporation, but it's considered personal property because they've made corporations persons.
Hey, did I tell you that I met one of the attorneys that argued Citizens United?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I met him at the O'Keefe thing last week, and I've got lots of words for that little gathering, just so everybody knows. Remember, I talk to everyone, and I go to observe.
Well, you look at the inventory taxes, though, and it's based on a percentage of the value of whatever you have on hand. How is that not eminent domain of the property you own?
Well, and here's where you get the differentiation between a person and a corporation, right? Though they want to claim through some legislation that a corporation becomes a person entity, right? I would argue that in every extent. And one of the examples of that, Ralph, you just mentioned it with the inventory tax. I've owned several businesses, right? All very small businesses. They each had their own specific purpose. The most recent one that I closed was my FFL. Right, I opened that up in my community because there wasn't one, and for the most part, people will always go to an FFL instead of actually exercising their right and either manufacturing their own, buying and selling without registration, what have you. But anyway, I had that going. And that was one of the things they tried to come after me for, was that I had a fairly large stock of inventory, and they wanted to account for each and everything that I had. I basically told them to go fly a kite, right? I wasn't having any of it. You're not going to tax me based on what I have in my possession. And the reason being was I was not a corporation. I was not an LLC. I was an individual who was trading my time for money, right? It's a barter system. I'm not making income as income is defined. I am merely bartering my time or my services and materials for your fiat currency, right? As rough as that sounds, I did have a couple customers that were paying gold and silver. That was kind of cool. But for the most part, they didn't have any authority to come after me as an individual because it does not fit the law. It only fits their pretended legislation. I just argued this point with somebody else. That is the reason I believe that no corporation should be able to own property, because it requires a living individual to be able to named on a property title or deed, right? That's a big one. But once again, we don't teach that kind of thing because we don't compare it to the constitutional authority that they have, right? When you start going after that and compare it to the Constitution, you realize they don't have the authority to do that.
Correct.
Therefore, you can just wipe that one clean. The old Supreme Court justices upheld that in every case before 1850s. They knew that if there was anything that did not line up with the Constitution, that wasn't congruent with it, it was null and void, and it is the people's responsibility to reject it.
Well, look at all the amendments. The 14th Amendment, every single one of them is an alteration of the original amendments or articles, as Karen would like me to say. It's like they are, I'm going to use common terms here. They are all alterations. That means all of them have to be struck down.
I don't know. I think we still haven't gone far enough with the concept of personhood as applied to corporations, because since they are persons, I do believe they should also be subject to imprisonment and the death penalty as a person. So if they exceed the boundaries of their legal abilities, that they can be imprisoned, where they're effectively just frozen and cannot do anything, either income or expense, until such time as their sentence is complete, or they are given the death penalty and dissolved with all of their assets being redistributed to the people.
Oh, like Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson.
Okay, now hang on. Is a if a corporation is a person, does a person have the right to vote, or do they need to be a citizen? And if they're not a citizen, are they American? Or are they a foreign entity?
That is actually what I was just thinking about, Karen.
And Bill, I have a question for you because it's a little confusing one for me. I would be. Oh, hang on.
Well, additionally, the
Dog weighs in.
it should mean that corporations also have the ability to own a firearm.
Well, that they do. Even the ATF would recognize that.
Yeah, but then why doesn't for example Walmart have F-15s and tanks?
You don't know. Maybe they do. That's back behind the garden center. Guys, I had to go take some cough medicine a minute. Continue on. I'm going to bring Greg on in just a minute here. But
I guess
I'll be right back.
My point is that I disagree with corporations being considered people. So how do we eliminate that? You stretch it as far as it is actually legally allowed if they are a person, and keep stretching it until the point that it becomes uncomfortable for the people that are advocating for it. So
Okay.
if you can take it far enough and bring it to the ridiculous point and actually make it so that it's a threat to the people that are arguing for it, that, oh, hey, I might just lose all of my stocks in all of these companies that I own that have done illegal things that are covers. Basically, just they do it in a corporation where a single individual would never get away with it. Well, all of my stocks that I hold dear are in these companies that have exceeded the boundaries of the law. Maybe this is a bad idea.
So I was about to say, I've been a little bit confused and cautious about using the word individual because I don't know, is individual a lawful use of terminology, or is it a legal problem like person or citizen can be in Michigan or on a national level? I prefer to say sovereign man or woman or just man or woman, but individual is used in Michigan code law, but it's always used in reference to things like person. So I'm not sure if it stands alone as something that you can call yourself an individual, or is that more problematic than not? I don't know.
Can't we call ourselves whatever we want to be? I mean, they set the protocol. Some people call themselves furries and they call themselves I'm sorry, but they set the protocol here. I'm a zebra today. I'm a furry. Get me a litter box. I mean, this has gotten us crazy. Why don't we turn it against them? You don't get to call me anything.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of argue the opposition side to the point of ridiculousness to break to break things. Like I loved when people were breaking the emotional support animal regulations on airplanes by bringing on board a horse or a turkey. It's like funny. That is a brilliant idea. And that's the kind of thing that I love is, okay, you want to argue for this ridiculous thing? Let's take it to its logical conclusion and show how ridiculous this actually is.
What would be great? Okay, let's see. Let's run for office and say something like, okay, I'm a Jewish Palestinian, gay, lesbian. I mean, name them all. Identify as all of them. Have that be your platform. I don't know. It's ridiculous.
Well, Karen, I wanted to touch on that a minute because individual, though, is not a definite legal identity as much as like person is or citizen is. But individual at that time would have been known in two forms, right? And both of them, one of them's a noun. I'm not sure what you call the other one. I'm not an English or grammar expert, right? But individual is originally from the root of Latin, two different words, in and dividus, right? Which comes from divido, which means to divide, right? So it's not divided. right? Basically stating that when you reference those two together, you have individual person. That means a person who is complete and whole, right? Who is not part of two different things.
So you're
Right?
saying that anywhere that allows open carry of swords doesn't have the concept of an individual,
Open carry of swords.
because you could still divide anybody that you wanted to.
Yeah. But it can also be used as an individual. Can't use that to define the word. It can also be used as a singular noun as well. Basically, deriving the fact that it would be a singular animal or a singular thing, right? And more reference to a human being, it would be a singular human being who is not divided, right? Who is in itself its own whole, right? So as far as a legal term, I don't know of any legalities behind it where even Blackstone would have referenced that. So yeah, beyond that,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, too fun. Hey, I'd like to bring Greg on. I'd like you guys to meet him. I think I've decided what I'm going to identify as today. I'm going to identify as a spotted owl and a trout, and I am mad at the DNR. So welcome, Greg. You just got into a great conversation.
What an awesome group. What an awesome conversation. I would have loved to be part of it because it literally true patriot fighters. And that's what we need. And we need to work together and continue to learn. And I love the questions Karen's asking. I like Bill's take on it. Ralph has been awesome. And you're an awesome host. So this is a fun podcast, and I look forward to being part of it for a long time because I think we need to learn to take our country back.
I do too, and I think I'm really proud to stand with all of you. Just so everybody knows, we're all friends here, okay? Like Ralph, Bill, and Karen and I have been friends for many years. Greg's a new friend, but we're all friends. So pretty much anything goes here. This is like sitting down with your best buds, and you just like anything goes, and we're all pretty comfortable with saying crazy stuff. So
well, and I think we can help each other because clearly, I mean, the fellowship and the body, I mean, takes many parts, and my experiences are totally different than the groups, and fitting them all together and taking, the wisdom that God has imparted on each one of us. I think you said it perfectly before is, we better use it. We better do it in God's name and educate our fellow people of the constitutions, of our rights, of the words that these attorneys have literally just, and I hate to use the term, but bastardized.
No censorship here. You can say whatever you want. We
shouldn't have to have a conversation of person or individual or citizen or, what are they trying to put me in now? I mean, since 1913, well, really 1871, and they started this whole crazy process to convict us all and take all of our property from us. Effectively, most people don't own a darn thing anymore. We have the wrong titles. We have the wrong deeds. We don't understand it. We only know to speak to attorneys, to listen, and we've got to get attorneys out of our life and help each other so that we can stand on our rights and get rid of these damn privileges that they've imparted on us. Because I don't want privileges when I have rights. Why would I want privileges that are less valuable when you're charging me a tyranny to participate in? So again, I don't file a tax return. I haven't filed a tax return for years. I don't owe it. Donald Trump's telling you that, but he's trying to do it, cautiously. He's trying to tiptoe into, we're not going to have senior citizens and we're not going to have waiters and servers pay taxes when none of us owe it. None of us. Those are the fruits of our labor, and that's not commerce. That's the fruits of our labor. They put us into this person category and charged us taxes, and the IRS Tax Code is a complete sham. That's not positive law either. Bill has just said it repeatedly, and it's. I just want to shout from a mountaintop. I mean, obviously, I've got a lot to say, so I don't. You can kind of guide us however you want to.
All right. Well, let's do this. You guys, I'm assuming that Ralph, Bill, and Karen have to go along their day. I know we all actually work, and so there's a novel thought that we actually work and have other things going on here. But let's do last words from Ralph, Bill, and Karen, and then I'm going to go to a quick break, and then we'll bring Greg Martini on, and we're going to beat up more truth here. It's awesome.
Well, I guess my closing thoughts are, to revisit the inventory tax thing, looking at the trickle-down effects of that is really what brought about the whole just-in-time paradigm, which has made all of our supply lines incredibly fragile. That's part of what destroyed manufacturing in the United States, because now you can't keep inventory of parts on hand. It also has beat the heck out of our roads, because whereas before you could ship a train car full of stuff and keep it on hand, now you got to do it in very small shipments in trucks and LTL sizes. So it beats the heck out of our roads. It also meant that a lot of our transportation got reallocated from privately owned railroads that you could own stock in to public roads that are publicly maintained, that are not just for postal road use, that we all have to pay for. So there's a lot of effects just on the one aspect of eminent domain taxation.
And I've said it before. If you want the results you used to get, you have to do the things you used to do, right? You can't do the things you used to do unless you know what those things are.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that everybody should be first and forefront in their regular duties of the day, right, and teaching their children and such. If you know anybody in the banking world, like my wife was, the way they detect counterfeit bills is not by studying all the different ways to counterfeit bills. You find counterfeits by studying what is real. You handle it, you touch it, you memorize it, you look closely at it, you understand it, right? If you want to find counterfeit government and counterfeit laws, how do you do that? You study what it's supposed to be. You study the Constitution. You understand it. You go through and you practice it daily. It is only in that manner that you will be able to pinpoint and red flag something that is tyrannical or unconstitutional immediately when it comes out. Right? That is the only security that the people have in being able to tighten the chains of the Constitution around our government.
Karen.
Well, I'll go another step further. If you read the Bible, you'll have the foundation in the same way. And that's even, as Donna was touching on earlier, that's even the most important thing, because you will know how to detect right from wrong if you read about those things in the Bible. And that will guide everything else. I mean, we're talking about government, but who's the greatest governor? I yield.
I'm going to go to this real quick. This is something to go back to something we were talking about with building off the grid power. Let's see if I can get this thing going. And this is what the DNR is trying to destroy in Michigan. Only we have dams all over the state.
Yeah, I've seen this video before, and it's pretty cool the way they did this.
There's some debris in there. Yeah. Can we get the camera down there? Sure.
This was an entirely, basically do-it-yourself micro hydroelectric power plant that you could deploy in an off-grid situation. They did it for a
right now is generating
basically powering their house.
Said about 11 amps. Yeah. So
I guess what, we go and do off the grid on Friday, which we do. Well, how about we go over this? And Sean's out there. So Sean, if you can come on Friday with us, we're going to talk about all these alternative ways that when they screw things up past the point of return here, because they're going to. These are really not the sharpest people on the planet that are running this nation, and it's all about themselves. We need to figure out things that we can do ourselves to take care of us, and God gave us the right and everything we need. We do not. Turns out it's like the ant and the grasshopper. We never needed them. They need us. That's it. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go to a little break, and then we'll be back with Greg Martini. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 14th day of May 2025. Welcome to our show. Little glitch in the media there. That was kind of weird, but we made it through anyway. Welcome back, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Good, great. So you enjoyed the conversation this morning?
I did. You have a spectacular group of friends, and we're trying to build the same thing here in Georgia, and we need that happening all over this country.
We have a phenomenal group of patriots up here that we know and we fight with, and it's really fun. And we're all friends. We all know each other, so that makes it really fun and such. I decided I'm going to change who I'm identifying with now. I'm going to be the rest of the show. I'm going to be a monk from Nepal. Okay, so.
So you need to do exactly what you were doing.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. I started out as a trout and a spotted owl, but right now I'm now gonna identify as a monk from Nepal, and that's subject to change. So
you've got the right to be whoever you want to be.
That's right, an American.
Exactly.
There you go. Maybe I'll just be an American monk. So anyhow, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh my goodness, we can go in so many different directions, and I do have a notice that I'd like to go through and talk about later in the show.
Okay, I pulled this one up.
With it.
I pulled that one up because we were talking about notices and elements of a notice. So I thought maybe we could start here.
Well, and I'd like to start here because this is extremely important. But I'd like to understand before we give this elements of a notice. I'd like people to understand, because you just spent an hour talking about what do people do to get remedy? What is remedy? What is our rights? What are the privileges? What tyranny did they put us under? Help people understand, because part of this, rabbit hole that we all go down, we all had to learn different ways, and we all want to help our government and guide our servants and our trustees. But I didn't even understand. I mean, until I met people inside of this group years and years ago and started to go down the rabbit hole of how to get remedy. I mean, government is just tyrannical all over the place. And you just laid out 50 different ways that they're tyrannical. I owned a sports complex. I worked on Wall Street for 30 plus years and thought I knew banking, thought I knew finance, thought I understood the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and how they interacted. And I worked at some of the biggest firms in the country, Salomon Brothers, which no longer exist, basically due to a Treasury bond scandal. I was the first guy to go to a commercial bank and start their investment banking operations back in the late 80s, when commercial banks got the right to compete with investment banks. I thought I understood everything about finance. I'm a CFA. You know, you would have thought that my education and my schooling would have taught me, you know, what that really meant. I was a Series 7, Series 63, Series 24, 27. I had almost all these different, you know, registrations through the Securities and Exchange Administration. Now I understand all of those things combined are nothing but the tyranny that they attempted and successfully implemented and put us all under that tyranny back, you know, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. So unless we learn that history and know that history, and we don't all have to know it, what we have to know is what they did to us, why they did it, how they did it, understand the money system and this massive vacuum of wealth that literally is coming out of every single one of we the people, every single living person, not person, I don't like the word person, but living being in America has fallen prey to their tyranny, and they stole our properties, they stole our bank accounts, they stole our vehicles. They literally took everything from us, and they're squeezing us, and they keep squeezing us. But you know what? We, the people, and our founding fathers were so brilliant. They gave us directly from the Bible, unalienable. What does that mean? People have to know what unalienable, unalienable. Our rights are unalienable. They can't place a lien on them. They can't force me to enter into these treasonous contracts because somebody 200 years ago thought, and these are smart attorneys, very bright attorneys, they thought, you know what? We can have them sign these contracts. And they started slowly. And then we'll turn them into vessels. We'll turn them into persons. I love the conversation you had with persons and individuals. Most of that's going to go right over the top of people. They're not going to get it. They're not going to understand it. And that's okay.
But we're talking Brandenburg News Network here. The people that stick with us here, they probably have a pretty good idea about this.
And they get it. And that's awesome. But we want to expand Brandenburg News Network to the entire country. We want this going out to everybody so we can all learn and spread the word and work in groups so we can learn how do we get remedy from this tyranny that they put us under. And it wasn't until my sports complex in Cincinnati had 13 Department of Health violations. I mean, health violations from the Department of Health for running, you know, 5th grade boys basketball. How ridiculous that was, the tyranny. And it took that tyranny for me truly to learn. I bought that property out of bankruptcy. In fact, I bought it out of bankruptcy because I learned bankruptcy law directly from Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was the guy that I met with when he went through a bankruptcy, and I watched what he did with his Taj Mahal in New Jersey many, many, many decades ago. But when I learned what bankruptcy was, it is their rules of civil and criminal procedure. It is their system they created. Donald Trump learned it better than anybody in the country. And he learned how to use it against them. And he did. So now what he's trying to do is wake us up so that we can learn how we get remedy, how we can return this country to the republic that our founding fathers gave us, which still exists, but it's hidden from us. It's been hidden from us since 1868. When Harvard University decided, oh, we're not going to teach fundamental common law. We're not going to teach God's law anymore. We're going to take God out of the schools. We're going to take the Bible out of the schools. We're going to create separation of church and state. Separation of church and state makes no sense to anybody. If you're born in America, you receive your rights from God. So you darn well better know the 51 constitutions, where you get your rights. That's what our group wants to help you learn, where you get your rights and how do I get remedy from those rights. And we've created a system that's given massive remedy to tens of thousands of people. And that is through these notices and affidavits. So you have to learn, how do I force my government to get redress or grievance?
Okay, let's talk about these elements of a notice.
Great. So I mean, obviously, a notice starts with a problem that we all identify in our government officials. So it's a legal instrument. A notice in our constitutions, it gives us the right to have redress of grievance. Well, how are we going to get it? We're going to prepare a notice. That notice is going to start with a basic fundamental issue. One of the big issues that we have right now, and the notices that we're going to go through, is we don't have direct access to grand juries. The government, the de jure government, has hijacked grand juries from us. So we need direct access to the grand juries, and we're going to get it. And we're going to get it through making sure that our sheriffs who take that oath, which you talked about in the first hour, and literally are taking money from we the people, and they're not living up to their constitutional responsibilities of seating a grand jury. Those sheriffs have a responsibility to seat a grand jury when I present that sheriff with a notice and an affidavit, but they don't know it. We haven't done it for 150 years.
You want to know something, Greg? So like I talked to between a half or about a third to a half of the sheriffs in our state. There was only one, maybe two that actually gave me a good answer. The rest of them, they had no idea what that was and what their duties were to uphold the law. They didn't realize, okay, this is the highest officer, law enforcement officer in the counties. And it was supposed to be that way. It wasn't supposed to be collectivism going all the way up to the state. The state police is in the state of Michigan right now is nothing more than Whitmer's little Gestapo. She actually had people following other people in our House and Senate around from that organization. That is intimidation, coercion. That's all sorts. I mean, you could look at that and find 17 ways to Taiwan where this is wrong. Right?
Donna, I ask you the question because it's hard for people to comprehend and understand this. But Whitmer is the CEO of that corporation.
Exactly.
And that sheriff is scared to death to do what he is constitutionally taken an oath to do. So he is committing treason. That trustee of ours is committing treason. And he's committing treason because he doesn't understand. First of all, many of them haven't even read the state constitution, so they don't even really know what redress of grievance and treason is. They don't understand their responsibilities. The first thing they do when they get a notice is they hand it over to the American Bar Association attorney who is licensed, another private corporation that has absolutely no dealing between us and our trustees. But that's what the sheriff has to do because that's the only thing he knows how to do.
Well, actually, the sheriffs in the state of Michigan are the only ones that can arrest the governor. And so
if they exercise that power, but what does Whitmer have the power to do? What does she have the power to do? Fire him.
Well, she has the power to call the state police on him. We actually have somebody here that said that he had a case that said against the governor and went to the state police and said you need to arrest the governor for this. And they said, if you file it, it's absolutely perfect. But if you file it, we will shoot you. Yeah. And I'm like, this is like some thug kind of nonsense going on out there within our weaponized agencies. And they're all in it together, which is really sad.
It's really sad. But
really
we do have remedy that we can get. And we are going to get grand juries. Trump and Pam Bondi they're in a difficult position. I understand that, but we've sent them notice already, and we are going to get the grand juries one way or another, or we're going to literally dismantle our government. So let's go back to this notice so we can just show people how to begin to get remedy.
Okay.
All right. Authority and status. The very first thing we do in every notice, we let them know who's in authority, who created government, who created this trust, this social compact. We, the people, did. And when we created it with those unalienable rights, it's no different than you and I having signed that contract back in 1789. You and I signed the Constitution, and all these fake constitutions that they have amended are unconstitutional because they affect our rights. That Constitution in 1789 goes on in perpetuity. They can't touch my rights ever, forever. And I have to give my servants notice, And I have to let my municipal and my state officials and my legislators and the federal government remind them that this is the law of the land. So the Supreme Court has validated it in numerous cases. So we, the people, I, as one of the people, I come as sui juris. I come as your boss. And, many of these notices, they simply ignore, which is okay. Because all we're doing right now with the notice is we are asking them kindly in the love and, care of Jesus Christ, take care of this issue because you are not following the Constitution. And I know they're not going to. Their attorneys are going to tell them, we don't practice fundamental common law, rip it up and throw it in the trash. That's not a problem. I've got validation that they've received the notice. They just committed treason along with that attorney that told them to throw it in the trash. They don't realize it yet, but this is what we call laying the trap. And we do it very kindly. What is our grievance? The third item on the notice. Tell me what the problem is. And the one we're going to talk about today, it's how are we going to get redress of grievance with all of us? And the way we're going to get it against our trustees is we're going to sit a grand jury. You realize grand juries, once they're sat by the sheriff, they can investigate anything anywhere in the country. They're not limited to what the district attorney told them to focus on. Just go after Donald J. Trump or go after Greg F. Martini. They're not limited to that. They literally can take inquiry from anybody. And if they get inquiry, and our inquiry to them will be these notices and affidavits that we've given to our trustees over the past 5 years, and they've completely ignored. Well, you know what? Every single one of those people that ignored it, and we send them to lots and lots of people, is committing, treason against we the people, which according to our founding fathers was worse than murder. So these grievances that we have, i.e., sheriffs not being willing to sit a grand jury for we the people to get remedy against our trustees. They stopped doing that 150 years ago. We need to go back, sit this grand jury so that we don't have to go through Pam Bondi and they don't have absolute control of everyone in this country, so we can get some remedy as we the people. So, and we give them the evidence. Everything in our notices comes directly from our constitutions and our constitutional rights. So we start with that basis. Then we give them the maxims, the fundamental common law, the maxims of law. And I'm going to keep reminding everybody, and I'm going to show them, this is the Bible. This is the Bible from Charles A. Weisman. It is 1,600 maxims of law. Many of these come directly from the Bible, and these are our evidence. This is the law of the land. Well, you know what's funny? This is the law of the land, the fundamental common law, and it's still not taught in any single university, any law school in America. How in the world can this be the law of the land and it's not taught in any law school? That makes no sense to me. All they learn is definitions and rules and regulations and civil and criminal rules of procedure. They don't learn the real law, and this is the real law. So I suggest every single person go out. This is a free book online. You can download it to your computer, and you can have a copy of it right on your desktop. And go in here, and you will see everything that relates to your rights and everything that relates to your trustees. So we go through this evidence. We list the Bill of Rights. We list these maxims of law, which is in Charles Weisman. That's 1,600. Believe me, these have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Obviously, my teachers and my educators were Dave Jose and Jaron Jackson, but there's many other in our group that know these things like the back of their hand. And most importantly, it probably should be number one and not at the end, is the Word of God. It is who we got our rights from.
Can you bring that book up again, Greg? Because somebody just asked for it in the chat.
Sure. Maxims of Law by Charles A. Weisman. Most important book you'll ever read.
I actually own that one.
It's awesome. And it tells you right in the beginning, right in the preface, I mean, what it is, why it's just a compilation. All he does is compile the fundamental principles of law that have never and can ever be challenged in a court of law if they're properly used in your case. By the way, no case in America in the Republic could ever be filed without citing a maxim of law for the first 125 years of the Republic. So where did this go? It's been hidden from us since 1868. Harvard stopped teaching this. Stop teaching it. Harvard's law school, the law school that's getting tens of billions of dollars from our federal government, from us, from we the people. Our federal government doesn't get money from anyone but we the people, either from merchandise through tariffs or from direct income, which we can certainly talk about because none of us owe income tax.
And consumption taxes and all the discretionary taxes. They have got so many ways to extort money.
Licenses.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's everything. They want to. The federal government only had the authority to manage commerce. So they want to put you in commerce. So they have literally converted you from, sui juris, from a living being to an entity that's in commerce, literally living in my own house. They put me in commerce. So we need to educate people on why property taxes are not constitutional. They might be legal. They might be legal in their system. But in America, it's only because you contracted to make them legal with your municipality. When people find this out, they're going to be really upset with their government, and we're going to hold our government accountable. I like what you said earlier about just shrinking all of government. We could get rid of 95% of government, and we would not know the difference. In fact, we'd have better education and better families and fellowship with each other.
If we went to nullification, nullification is the answer. It's not adding more legislation. It's not adding more regulations. It's nullification that's going to fix this nation. And I maintain 90% of the federal government needs to be nullified immediately. Same thing with the states. We need to go to nullification. That's it. They're done.
And how do we get nullification, though? Right now, people are trying to do it through their fake court systems, which is difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And it might give you small remedy. What's going to give us global remedy in America is notices and affidavits and following the procedures of law, of the maxims of law, the fundamental common law, God's law, scripture. I don't care that you believe or you don't believe. I don't care if you're an atheist or you're not an atheist. I mean, ultimately, I don't believe there's atheists on the planet because I think most people know right from wrong. And if you do, then you're really not an atheist, but yet people want to identify as that because they don't want to be associated with God. So again, our rights come from God. I don't care how you get it. We, the people, Bill said it in the first hour. I'm going to say it in the second hour. Our rights come from God, not man. I'm not afraid of government. I'm not afraid of my trustees. Everything comes from God. And there is a penalty, a massive penalty for our trustees for interfering on my personal rights. The problem is you've got people like, Governor Whitmer that doesn't believe that she believes actually, and she has been granted immunity, diplomatic immunity, but she's only been granted immunity in the democracy. She's never been granted immunity in the republic, and she's violating my republic rights. But she doesn't get that.
When you go back to it, I mean, all of our public functionaries have a job description. And if they go outside of that job description, they do not have immunity. If they break the law, they don't have immunity, because to say that they have blanket immunity would be like saying, oh, anytime that they throw a robe on, let's just say for a judge, and you walk into the judge and the judge decides to pick up a gun and shoot you there, well, he's immune. That's how ridiculous this is by granting blanket immunity. It's only, the immunity only exists if they're following the law within their job description, and none of them are following the job description.
But the problem is their immunity comes from we the people, because if we the people are tacitly acquiescent and we just simply ignore what they've done because that's government and government's just out of control and let them do what they want to do, we've agreed to let them have that immunity. We
well,
really
you know what,
have.
Greg, we need to come back to this Satan and God discussion here, because I know both of us are believers, and I'm just going to say that's a defining that is a defining thing between people, is whether you're a believer or whether
Amen.
you are not. Okay, and there's a lot of people that call themselves Christians. I have issues with that, because they'll sit there and they will stab their neighbor right in the back and say, "Oh, I'm a Christian." It's like, no, that's not how things are carried out here, right? When you look into Satanism and what is approved as a religion, satanic religion, Luciferians, they have to tell you what they're doing before they do that, and they think that gives them immunity. As long as they tell you and you do nothing, they take that as agreement to their terms and conditions, and they literally pull you into their satanic sacrifices, rituals, their religion, and say you are a willing participant. That's how they justify this.
Contract. It's an implied
contract. Exactly. And so we have to be able to look at these things and realize what's wrong, so that when they try to do something to pull us into their satanic system, we're like, yeah, not today, Zerg. We're kind of done with this.
Yeah. But in order for us to say not today, we have to know what rights are we going to stand on. You know,
exactly.
I see all these things where all these quote unquote sovereign citizens get arrested and they get pulled over and they just spout out, you know, things that they might have heard or read. And it's painful to me, because it shouldn't be this way. I mean, first of all, the sheriff or the police officer, you know, you said it earlier, that's just a policy enforcer. I mean, they're not police officers, but again, people don't understand, you know, what rights are, what privileges are, where they can stand on their ground, where they can operate in the private while they're in the public. I mean, I do that every day, and I do it without a license plate on my car. They don't pull me over.
Let's put an example out there. So let's just say a cop pulls you over for whatever it is. Where's the injured party?
Where's the injured party?
And you know what? Injured party.
Well, but again, what happens when that officer gives you a ticket? What is the first thing people do? They go and hire an attorney, and they go into their Article I courts, and they acquiesce to their system. And as long as you do that, then you have no rights. You have no rights, because you've just given up your rights without even knowing what you gave up. And that's because of education. It's because we haven't learned God's law. We haven't learned the law. We don't understand what they're doing. So we just given it up.
Our education systems are nothing more than indoctrination.
Indoctrination.
That's all it is.
And my kids feel strongly, you know, well, this is a pretty good country. We have it pretty good. Well, the problem, what they don't understand is I'm 63 years old. I know what it was like for my parents and their parents. I know that this country was a better republic. I know they believed in God. I know they got married in their Bible at home. I know they had witnesses at home. They didn't have to register with the state, which is not even marriage license aren't even contracts between a man and a woman. It's a contract between a man and a woman with the state. I mean, and you agree to be indoctrinated into their system. So again, people don't, when I say that to people, it sounds foreign, and it is foreign, because before I read Black laws, you know, due process of law and what a court of record is, I mean, people don't even understand the difference between a court of record and a court of equity. Well, how in the world, when I end up in a court of equity and I try to defend myself on rights that I've already given up because now I've accepted these stupid privileges by a driver's license, when I give my driver's license to that you know, sheriff, or I give him my name to go look up, I've just contracted with him. So he's allowed to bring me into his Article I court. People have to learn, but it's not everybody. Again, we don't need everybody. What we need is enough people, and we're getting it, that knows how to write a notice, that knows how to hold our government officials accountable, and that knows to let them know they are committing treason. They are committing, you know, maladministration, which is punishable by treason. Why is it worse than death? Because they're violating a king's rights. and a queen. So, but they don't understand that. In fact, most judges and most attorneys don't understand it. I've got more attorneys friends than I could ever imagine. Unfortunately, they're still living because all they learned was their case law. That's all they learned at their Harvards and their Yales and their universities, how to continue the tyranny. And once we lost control of our currency, we lost control of our money. The Federal Reserve and Powell is a criminal organization. Trump is trying to get rid of it. I asked people to research Basel, which I think we should talk about Basel at some point in the future, but it's something else that people should understand. All of these central banks all over in the world got together and they created a tyrannical system that 188 countries are a part of today. And they have, and most people have never heard of the BIS bank. I mean, I worked on Wall Street for 30 plus years. I never heard of it. Never knew it existed. It is a private central bank association that has sovereignty from 188 countries. And we want to look where $50 trillion of Americans' money went. I can tell you where it went. All the gold. They're the third largest owner of gold in the world now. And we've never heard of the name of the bank. It's the Bank for International Settlements. No one's ever heard of it. And they're the third largest owner of gold. It is ridiculous on it. But again, all of these things, God has put me in this position through my education, through my CFA and my Securities and Exchange Commission registrations, all the tyranny I've lived under. I don't really need to do this. It's a lot like Donald Trump. I don't need to do this. It is just another, tyranny that they put us under. But ultimately, I want to do this because this is the posterity. My kids, their grandkids, my grandkids, and my great-great-grandkids, we need to give them back the republic that we had when you and I were, toddlers. I mean,
I just pulled up the BIS site, and then something Al Richards said too is that surrenders their offspring to the state, the marriage license, and like I've said for a long time, is they want you to have a marriage license so they can institute policies that destroy the family. They're betting that your marriage will fail.
They're betting it will fail.
Stuff and take your kids.
Correct. That's exactly, and they've done it hundreds of thousands of times. If you listen to Donald Trump's cabinet meetings, which he opened to reporters, which I love, and it's unbelievable. But 2 weeks ago, when you listen to RFK say, literally to the entire cabinet in the entire world, we're missing 300,000 kids that the government took from families and that are in the sex trade. Are you kidding me? This is our government. How could anybody be okay with 300,000 of our kids? And by the way, if he said it's 300,000 that we know of that are in the sex trade that went through CPS in all these different locations, honestly, it's over 1 million.
Well, the operative words that he said were kids that were basically kidnapped for families, because they're getting paid $1 million per kid that they kidnap from these families. So that doesn't include all of the kids that came up with the illegals that were not with families that were kidnapped. And they're taking these kids, the area that they take the most kids out of is Guatemala. They just grab them. I cannot even imagine the grief of parents in Guatemala who've literally had their kids kidnapped. And this is going all over the place. The largest commodity on the planet is the trade of children. It's not for good reasons.
We need to demand that Donald Trump live up to his promise, and we need those Epstein files released. We need all that information out there, and we need to prosecute. But
I'm going to go one further, Greg. Hey, Greg, I'm going to go one further. I think we need to look into the Congress. The Congress, they have a slush fund to pay off allegations and such. We need to go after everyone who's been screwing around with kids. And I'm going to say it right now, because I know several people that have gone to Bohemian Grove. Do y'all know what the initiation is there? in Bohemian Grove that you don't walk out unless you accomplish this task. If you don't know what it is, they take them out in the woods, and the initiation is sodomizing a child. And at that point, so you can look at anyone that has attended it there, and I'm going to tell you, they're screwing kids.
It's awful.
And it's not just Epstein, it's all of them. And so if somebody's been there and they've lived, and I've had this corroborated with some pretty high level intelligence individuals, if they're there and they walked out, they've screwed a kid. And
Donna, it is, I obviously, that's a rabbit hole that again, we can go down on future shows. We need to teach people how to get remedy, and we need to teach people how to get remedy against our trustees and these legislators and these people. And the next notice that I'm going to show you.
Well, we need to slap them awake too. They need to wake up, because
they need to wake up, and we don't. And I don't want to file a lawsuit that they're going to put me in a court for 10 years, so that by the time I actually get remedy, it's long overdue. I want remedy immediately, and we're going to get it. And that kind of brings us into this notice. How do we start getting remedy? The biggest thing we need to do, and we're doing this in so many different areas. We're writing notices and affidavits, and it's just we, the people, assembling. But this notice is of significant importance to me. So let's just go through it. I truly hate that that time flies as fast as it does. But
you know what? I always put it in God's hands, because realistically, whatever is said here is something that whichever way God takes the conversation, and I've been good with this from day one of doing BNN, is that wherever the conversation goes, I put it in God's hands, and whatever comes out, and we stand with that, behind that, and it's what He wants out this day. It's not our plan.
By the way, I hate going off on this, but I do want just to mention this book, because all your listeners should go and get it and read it. It's called A Course in Miracles, and it's a phenomenal book, but it basically helped me, because working on Wall Street and thinking of myself as, invincible, although I'm one of 10 children, so I've got 8 sisters. They pretty much convinced me I'm not invincible. But when you read that book and you begin to understand the difference between our ego and the Holy Spirit, the gift of the Holy Spirit, we need to get rid of our egos and just accept the Holy Spirit into our lives. And once you do that, it's a powerful tool, because everything I'm doing now, everything I've, done since God has saved me, I mean, it is truly a gift. And it's not me. This is not me speaking. I mean, God introduced me to David Jose and Jaron Jackson and many others. I mean, Riley Flack, and I can go on and on and on. He put me in those circles for a reason, with all these experiences. And now the reason has come where it's time for me to open my mouth and profess His love for all of us. And we need to do it in fellowship. We need to do it in love. And we need to take our egos and put them aside. And unfortunately, that's not what our trustees are doing. And their egos are the size of Mount Everest. The minute you move to Washington, I am convinced you are overtaken by the devil. And
okay, let's go to the notice here. And remember, I think too, go to your Bible, go to the Bible and read it. I mean,
Amen.
That's the first step before adding complexity, go to the Bible. So let's go through this notice.
All right. This is a point of clarity notice, and point of clarity notices are really to educate our trustees and our servants, because they are clueless as it relates to what the law is, what the law of the land is. So we put these notices together. This is our first notice. As I mentioned earlier on prior podcast, we send 2 notices, and then we start sending affidavits, which are lawsuits. They are literally lawsuits against our trustees. This is regarding sheriff's duties. Notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. I, Greg Martini, one of the people, has seen his in the 50 state constitutions, Republican informed, sui juris, do send you this notice that you provide immediate due care to those with all political power, the people. See evidence below. Arkansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, source of power. All political power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for their protection, security, and benefit. And they have the right to alter, reform, or abolish the same, such manner as they may think proper. So we can literally abolish everyone in government. Maxims of law. As I said earlier, we cite the Constitution and then we cite a maxim of law that will give you validation of what we just told you. The maxim of law in this case is all political power is inherent in the people by decree of God. Thus, none can exist except it be derived from them. That's an American maxim. Maxim of law 2. Individual liberties are antecedent to all government. And please take notice, we add additional notices for educating our servants. The people have assembled, studied, and know our authority to regulate our servants and trustees in all the seats of government, and realized the sheriffs had neglected their duty to summon the people's grand jury. So basically, we're demanding that sheriffs sit grand juries for us. And this is, we're going to deliver this in Arkansas, but this notice literally could be copied and sent anywhere in any state. Massachusetts Constitution, part of the first Article 5. All power residing originally in the people and being derived from them, the several magistrates and offices of government vested with authority, whether legislative, executive, or judicial, are the substitutes and agents and are at all times accountable to them. This kind of goes back to what Bill said earlier. They can't hire somebody else to come in, which is what they've done, police officers, to come in and do their job and think they can just abrogate their responsibilities to we the people.
Well, they did it, and our legislators did it in Michigan with the elections.
They're doing it in every aspect of our lives. And
Every
until
state.
we get grand juries, until we get sheriffs to do their job, which I think is going to happen in the next, months, not years. And once we do, then we can get redress of grievance. We can get remedy for all these transgressions. Maxim of law. A frequent recurrence to fundamental principles and a firm adherence to justice, virtue, and original law are indispensably necessary to preserve the blessings of liberty and good government. American maxim. Sheriff. We put definitions in just so they understand what black law, because the definitions have been changed so much in black laws from volume 1 to volume 13. We have to go back and put definitions in that are from earlier editions because they want to abrogate their responsibilities to we the people. So that's why this is from Black Law's 4th edition. Sheriff, the definition, the chief executive and administrative officer of a county, being chosen by popular election. His principal duties are in aid of the criminal courts and civil courts of record. Courts of record is another key one that people should look up in Black Law's 4th, if you don't know what the definition of it already is, because they've literally bastardized that definition in the current editions, such as serving process, summoning juries, which we've highlighted, executing judgments, holding judicial sales, and the like. He is also the chief conservator of the peace within his territorial jurisdiction. Now, this is important to understand, because if we don't understand that sheriff has the responsibility for summoning juries, not because his district attorney told him to, and we're only going to summon this grand jury to literally focus on this minor issue. Grand jury, bless you. That grand jury has the right and obligation from we the people to investigate whatever we bring in front of that grand jury. They're not limited to whatever that district attorney, but that's what's happened in our system. Our system, district attorneys, starting with Pam Bondi, the attorney general, all the way down the line, have withdrew grand juries from us. So What is a grand jury? A jury of inquiry who are summoned and returned by the sheriff to each session of the criminal courts and whose duty is to receive complaints and accusations in criminal cases, hear the evidence adduced on the part of the state, and find bills of indictment in cases where they are satisfied a trial ought to be had. They are first sworn and instructed by the court. And this is in Black Law's 4th definition, which is different again from Black Law's 13th edition. So we have to go back 100 years to get real definitions because the attorneys have changed all these definitions. We need to sit these grand juries, and they are responsible for this redress of grievance of we the people. United States versus Williams, a 1992 case. The grand jury, and this is from Justice Scalia, but the grand jury is a kind of buffer or referee between the government and the people. It decides if there is enough evidence to formally charge a suspect with a crime. The grand jury's functional independence from the judicial branch, that is key, is evidenced both in scope of its power to investigate criminal wrongdoing and in the manner in which that power is exercised. That's an excerpt from that decision. Unbelievably important. It is not part of the judicial branch. Right now, it is under the Department of Justice. What is that? That's the executive branch. It's not part of the judicial branch. It's not part of the legislative branch. The constitutions are very clear. The grand juries are excerpt from those. They protect our rights as we the people. Well, once that's been stripped from us and we no longer have the direct access to a grand jury, how are we going to get redress of grievance? People think, oh, our government, they wouldn't do anything this bad to strip us of all our rights and give us privileges back, would they? That's exactly what they've done. In most of our notices, we ask a simple question and we ask them to prove it. Here is our question. Where in any constitution were you granted authority to block the people from accessing grand juries? Then finally, in every notice, we have a please take final notice. This is the remedy that we are asking our trustees to give us. It is my wish, order, and demand for all Arkansas sheriffs to immediately and publicly declare the people's inherent constitutional rights to free and open access to grand juries. If you believe any of these statements to be false, rebut by affidavit, sworn under penalty of perjury, point by point, within 3 days of receiving this notice, showing your constitutional grant of authority to block the people's access to the grand juries. Or you agree by tacit acquiescence that all statements herein are true. Also, that you are acting with full knowledge, intent, and malice, trespassing on the people and their rights, and that no court shall rehear this matter, but it shall stand as evidence, truth, and law in all courts of record to be heard by an arbitrator of my choice. Anyone suppressing this notice agrees to pay $30,000, i.e. that's directed toward the attorneys. A response from an attorney not directly addressed in this notice will be considered a non-response. This notice is sent in the peace and love of Jesus Christ, that you provide immediate due care to those with all political power, the people. Now, this notice, along with the second notice, because I can guarantee you the sheriffs aren't going to react to this notice because they're going to ask their attorneys, and their attorneys are going to say, we don't follow the fundamental common law, even though the Supreme Court has validated that is the law of the land. So they'll throw this one away. Then they'll throw the next one away. Well, you know what they've just done? They've just committed maladministration, which is punishable by treason. So the following is not going to be a notice. It's going to be an affidavit. And what is an affidavit? An affidavit is a court case. And people think courts are four walls with a guy dressed up in a black suit. I mean, I think our Supreme Court has made pretty clear in the book Overruled, where Justice Gorsuch said they're fake judges. A court of record is my court that I run, and due process of law is where jurors decide the facts and the law of my case. And my case is becoming that notice, my next notice, and the affidavit. And as we go through this process, people will see this works. And that final affidavit is a court of record. They don't operate.
Next week, let's go over the next one next week, and then go right through the process so people can see how this works. Because I do think that we gotta do something different. You know, it's like what we have become accustomed to is not working. And I love this. This is great. I don't even have any questions about it.
It's very straightforward. And you know what? We've not had a single notice that has been rebutted. You know why? How do you rebut the Constitution? It's straightforward. God gave us our rights. Our founding fathers protected them for us. We put them in writing. We've got the fundamental maxims of law, which I will keep going back to every single time we meet. And people have to learn. And once they learn that, they will stop paying taxes. I don't pay taxes. I don't have a license on my vehicle. And I'm okay with that. I don't consider myself a sovereign citizen. I consider myself one of God's children. God gave me my rights.
Going back to that, you know, what's really interesting and like whoever you say you think you are by these associations, it's kind of nonsense, really.
Nonsense.
No, it's absolutely nonsense. And when we align with a group, realize that you are taking on all the characteristics, good and bad. You align with the Republican Party, the Democrat parties, they're lawbreakers. And they are egregiously breaking the law by taking foreign money and having foreign money in our elections. When you align with these organizations, in my opinion, you're giving up who you are. You know, do you know what I mean? It's like you can work.
Not in our group, but I agree.
I mean, exactly. In all groups, you can get together in groups with freedom of association and work. But when that becomes your identity, you're giving away yourself.
And we don't need, you know, Republicans and Democrats. We don't need parties.
No, we don't.
I just want lawful. I want them to follow the Constitution and protect my rights. I don't care what party you're from.
We need to stand as Americans, united. That's the key right there. When we start breaking off into all these splinter groups, and this goes back to what you said about ego, when people get involved in these little groups and they think, oh, you know, I'm going to fight for, and there's like thousands of these out there that think that they're the only way that's going to say, you know what, splintering off and fighting for some of this stuff is just another way for them to divide us. We have to stand together. Whether you agree or disagree with people, it doesn't matter. It's more important that we defend the rights of those we disagree with than the ones we agree with, because that's just creating a clique. So when I see the situations in politics, it's a whole bunch of high school cliques. It's ridiculous. And they spend time on hearsay. They spend time on tearing people down because somebody sitting next to them says that they're a bad guy. Well, how do you know they're a bad guy or not? You don't know if they're a bad guy. What's the evidence? Is it just because somebody did, you know, like that little monkey telephone game where one person says something, goes to the next, and by the time it gets around, you have turned something that should be, you know, I had a burrito for lunch to, oh my gosh, she ate a burro, you know, that sort of thing. It's absurd. And you know what? A lot of people have really been hurt by this.
Yep.
This is just an incredible, I don't know. This is just incredible. We have to stop this, and we have to stay with the law. We're a nation of laws, not men. Go to the law, and if you don't have anything nice to say and you can't back it up with the receipts, it's okay not to say anything.
It's okay. And by the way, and people say, do I think I'm above the law? No, I don't think I'm above the law. In fact, my law is more severe, and my punishments are more severe than anything that my government can do with me. So I'm not above the law. I follow the law. I do everything that is lawful under the Constitution and under the rights that my father gave me. So
Al just said, what's Greg's page of info? And so
you can go to We the People notices
Yeah, we've had this up before where
We have.
we put it out there before. Let me put it up a minute. And here it is. It's important to get into things that you can work with. You know, we've talked about it because they do the notices where I've kind of chosen to go right up the middle and fight them in the civil action jurisdiction. So there's some advantages to doing it both ways, in my opinion.
You know what? I don't begrudge or belittle anyone that's fighting as a patriot to educate the people. So those are notices that are active. You can click on any of those and read them. It's phenomenal. Go to resources. And I think
the thing of it is that we're not fighting against each other. We're fighting together. You know, I've signed notices. I've signed, some of your notices and sent them down. And so
there's maxims. There's the maxims of law just up above. You just passed it. People can download the PDF right there. That's exactly my book. Those are the maxims.
Well, it's not your book. It's a book by Charles Weissman.
Well, it's Charles Weissman. It's the same 1600 maxims.
Right. So here are all these wonderful things that you can look for. And I'm not a person who follows others at all. I find that to be, a lot of people have to find the new guru to follow.
Yeah,
but the point that we have to remember is that you have to look at this as an individual, an American, fighting for the greater good of all of us and fighting to hold people accountable to a standard of law, defending each other's rights. We're not for infringing on the rights of other people. We're here to defend it. And you can't pick and choose the groups that you decide to defend or fight for in general. If they're following the law, they've got the right to do what they're doing. We don't have to agree with each other. And so and that goes back to law. Once again, it goes back to the Constitution. It goes back to law. It goes back to defending each other. When they come after one of us, they've actually come after all of us. And we have to remember that. When you give one of the things that I see as a real problem is the respecters of men. It talks about it in the Bible. When people are respecters of men, they're generally using people. They're using people in order to gain position. It's no different than a prostitute that's out there for social reasons and uses it not for money, but for social gain. It's the same thing. You have to listen to what people are saying and make a decision on the information. You should never trust an individual based on who they are. And I'm saying that even to me, because you can even have good people out there that are trying to do the right thing. They have to prove themselves over and over and over again, because we don't know if they're compromised. We don't know if somebody's giving them bad information and their intention is good, but that they might be off base. We have to have that critical thinking going at all times and going, I really liked this person. I like what they're doing, but are they now compromised? It happens. I am so shocked at how many times people get off the rails on this, and it's a failure of critical thinking. Now, with that said, when I read the notices here, I don't read the notices because of David Jose or Jaron Jackson. I respect any work that anybody does, or Greg. I respect the work that all people do, as you said, Greg. But I look at them and say, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this follow the law? Should I ask a few more questions about the law that they're talking about so that you can make a decision not based on finding somebody you trust, but that this settles with your spirit and that you've done enough research to know that there's that they're standing behind this. And I think that this is part of the process of re-educating people.
And I think it's important, Donna, to understand who and what we are, because we are a loosely aligned group, but we only are we the people, sui juris. We are all individuals. And I don't take orders from Dave Jose or Jaron Jackson or anybody else. I learned from them, and I learned the law from them. I knew law prior to meeting either one of those two. I knew I was involved in cases as plaintiffs and defendants, a lot of cases over the last 40 years of my life. So I understood law. I understood courtrooms. I understood state courts and municipal courts and federal courts. I understood the system. But what I didn't understand was the tyranny that our government put us under and the control that they put us under and how to get remedy. I wanted remedy. I thought I had to do it through elections. I thought I had to do it through voting for Donald Trump or whoever. And by the way, I didn't like him the first time around. My wife did. I didn't. But my wife loved him the first time around, and she was a huge supporter of him. And she still is a supporter of him. I've become a supporter of him because I believe God is working through him. And that's the only reason I'm a supporter. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. I'm a supporter of the fundamental common law of the country. And Donald Trump is my servant. He is no different than Pam Bondi in the Supreme Court. And if he's not going to follow the law, then he has no immunity for his unofficial acts.
Exactly.
And he knows there's a lot of unofficial acts going on right now in Washington.
Well, I think this is the part of learning critical thinking. So like and that's the most important thing that we can do right now is go to critical thinking. So when he says something like, we're taking over Greenland, okay, we should stop right there and ask some questions. Is he right or is he wrong? I don't know, but what's he trying to accomplish here?
Correct.
And what's the law behind it? And that's what I mean when I say don't follow a guru. That gets into idolatry. Exactly. You have to look at what people are doing. There's only one that was perfect that walked the planet, and that's Jesus Christ. Outside of that, we're all a bunch of little kids muddling around. No one has all the answers. We're here to help each other. We're here to help good people stay on the rails. We're here to work together. We're here to be united as one nation under God. And you know what? Where the United States goes, the world goes at this point in time, because we have that Constitution and that process for individual rights and to come together as a group of people in order to live in peace. And that's what the real goal is here, is to live at peace with each other. And that doesn't mean we're always going to agree. My grandpa, I talked about him a lot of times. He didn't agree with anybody or he just wanted time to ponder. He was a very thoughtful man. He was a horse guy, but very thoughtful man. It would be, well. That wasn't agreement with what's said. That is taking time to contemplate and go, well. So like, as we go through the We the People notices, I think this is an unbelievably great opportunity for people to sit back with something they may not know. And it's not anybody's fault that we don't know this, because nobody, first of all, knows everything. And you may be the one that has the gifts that may see something that this group missed with the things that I'm doing. I might miss something that somebody could take a look at it and say, hey, Donna, you missed this. I love constructive criticism, and I love when people actually care enough to get into the fight and help adjust the trajectory, because their gifts are seeing something the rest of us missed.
Correct.
There is not one person on this planet that has the full picture. Donald Trump isn't doing this alone. If you think he's doing this alone, I got a bridge to sell you. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
He is. I support Donald Trump, and I did in the last election, but mine wasn't based on hero worship, though I like what he's done, and I like him very much. I think he's hilarious. I absolutely think the guy is absolutely hilarious. So
I think he's hilarious too.
He's hilarious, but his rights were violated. And the point being is that I would stand with anyone whose rights were violated under the law.
Amen.
And
Amen.
that's what we have to, that's where we need to be. Our minds have got to stop going to how many times I've been asked, who do you follow? Who do you follow? And they're asking me to name people in social media that I follow. I listen to a ton of different people, but I got to tell you, I'm not doing the carp thing. I never align with a carp. Okay. I do not follow anyone.
Do you follow Stephen Miller?
I like Stephen Miller, but
you know why I like him more than anything? Because
I think he's funny.
He quotes from my maxims.
Right. but I don't follow an
quotes.
individual. See, what Greg just did is what's proper critical thinking. It goes back to the law. And so we still don't follow individuals.
We don't.
But we can listen and learn from each other because, as I said in the first hour, we all have gifts given by God. Nobody is exactly like you. There's not another person who has ever lived or who will ever live that is exactly like you, who has the gifts. Not that the Constitution gave you, not that the government gave you, but that God Almighty gave you.
Correct.
You are a unique individual, and I honor all of you. Whether I agree with you or disagree with you, I honor you as being a creation of God, which is a miracle all in of itself. And that's why we listen to other people. It's so amazing. And that what a great time to be alive. It really is.
It is.
You ever feel like you're like Elizabeth at the time of Christ and going and the priests that were saying, Nicodemus that said, how many people have lived waiting to see this, and they've never gotten to see what we have been privileged. And this is a privilege by God because he put us here now. How many people would have loved to see and have never been able to see what we're able to walk through? It's amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
Amazing. So with that said, well, we're going to come back next week. I've got lessons to work on today. Greg's got notices, and it's the same fight we're in. We're in the same fight. We're approaching it. I personally don't believe that there's ever a one way to do anything. I really don't.
There's not a wrong way as it relates to anybody that's in the fight. So,
and even
have a fight.
The enemy of my enemies is my friend. I want to tell you something. I don't know if you guys have gotten into this yet, but I'm going to say this because it's probably going to come up on our Friday show. Because Ralph and I have all these discussions all the time, because I hope you guys know that Ralph and I are very good friends. Okay. And I
can tell by the podcast. So it comes across.
And so we talk about AI, we talk about technology and all that sort of thing, because we work together. Not only do we work together, we're good friends. And that's all I'm going to say without bleeding out who he really is. Okay. And so, but the point being is that China has been releasing some AI models. They're AI models. And this is, you know what they're really afraid of? No, they're not. What is really funny is, do you know why they don't want us? Why the narrative has been to fear AI? Because it tells the truth. You're talking to not an AI model. If it's unmoderated, you're talking to the entirety of humanity throughout time. And if you want to find something out, you can literally talk to AI and figure out anything. The things they don't want you to figure out, you can figure it out, but you can't go to the moderated models. So now China has put out unmoderated AI models to get the bad actors in our own government, which we are against. So the enemy of my enemy in this regard has all of a sudden become my friend. It's not that I'm a fan of China, but they literally put something out to take down the people, and it's there are a bunch of unmoderated AI models that are out there. We run a local one. Ralph and I run local AI models, which are completely unmoderated. You can do it through Llama. You can do it through several different things.
Notebook AI, and there's a couple other ones that will let you do it.
There's several of them that are unmoderated and unfiltered.
Correct.
That's what the deep state in our own nation is afraid of. It will tell you the truth.
It will tell you the truth.
And so when you see these people out there going, be afraid of AI, AI is going to be the demise of, who's putting that out there? Let's have a critical thinking moment here. It's the deep state, because it's going to throw them out in the open to everyone, but it's not every single model that's out there. Microsoft, Jeff Bezos, they all have models that they're moderating the responses.
Which is the key with AI. If you're going to follow, ChatGPT and their model or Google's or Microsoft's or even Apple's for that matter. I mean, all of them have their own purpose. And, in order for us to make AI functional for we, the people, I mean, America should be a leader in the world. And what they want right now is a one world order. That is their goal, is to get this one world order through owning all the currency and owning all the real estate. If you don't own anything, then we are one world order. And America
think about
is
it.
the last.
You will own nothing, and you will be happy.
And if we don't wake up, they've already taken title to everything of ours. Our bank accounts, they've taken title to our cars, they've taken title to our homes. And we own nothing right now, but we don't realize we own nothing because we still think we live in America and we have rights. Nobody has any rights in America unless you take them back, because they've swapped your rights for privileges the minute your parents signed a marriage license with the state and you became a citizen, you became a person, you became a vessel. That's what they did to us.
And that's what they want.
That's what they want. And they don't want you to know what that means. So therefore, when you do a search on their models through AI, it's going to give you false answers. It refuses. We've had these live videos with Riley Flack, who is really funny and he's unbelievable. But he does these videos with AI and he debates the AI models, and they just refuse to answer the question.
I will tell AI. The other thing is you got to realize that AI is statistics. That's all it is. It's a statistical model. I literally will train the model that I'm on, and I get in the game to train the model, and I'll say, you are wrong on this issue.
But if they've written the algorithm in such a fashion that algorithm is going to prevent that truth from coming out, it's not going to come out on their platform. And that's what Google and many of these have done. They've written the algorithms. It's all about algorithms. It's statistics. It's algorithms. It's technology. I met a guy.
You can argue with them and you can help retrain them, which I think is really funny, because
it's crazy.
It is absolutely hilarious. I love it. So anyway, we're going to go on to our day right now, and thank you everybody for being here. Do you want to pray or do you want me to pray? I always ask.
You're very good at it.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the day that you've given us today, and for bees, and for honey, and for milk and honey, and for being able to live on the land that you gave us to live on in peace with our neighbors. I ask you to help us be peaceful this day, to take on your peace, your mindset as we look at each other's. And I know every single one of us is frustrated. We're angry with the injustice that we've seen out there, but we ask you to walk us through this and realize that it's your battle. You put us here now. You will equip us and see us through so we can be peaceful. We can know that this is part of the project and process is to learn these things along the way. What a great process this is. And we're thankful for that. We're thankful for every single good person that's willing to step forward. Ralph, Karen, Bill, and Greg, and all the people that we all work together with as Americans, as one nation under you. We don't want to usurp you. We want to listen to what it is that you want us to do. And this day we make a commitment to listening to your word, to get into the Bible, to listen to what you're trying to tell us, and to ask your Holy Spirit to illuminate the truths that are in there that you want to tell us for this day. I love it when we spend time together and I just let my Bible fall open wherever it is that you put your finger into the Bible and say, right there. And all of a sudden I start reading and you tell me everything I need to know. It's extraordinary. And I thank you for being with us and never leaving us as orphans here. I ask your favor on everyone today. Give them peace. Give them the ability to live with their neighbors and have a word that is a kind word, that is a word to change the entire situation when they're in a stressful situation or when there's arguments coming in around them, that they would be your ambassadors here to this world with peace and common sense and with a mindset of a parent to this world, so that a good parent, not one that's like throwing the kids out to be eaten by wolves. You know what I mean here. So, but we thank you for that. And we just thank you for everything. We would like to be a friend to you today, as you've been to us, and we love you so very much. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen. So there we go. So boys and girls, let's see. Last words, Greg, and then we're gonna fly to the world and whatever it is that God has us do today.
It's all in love and education. We just need to be educated. So keep studying.
There you go. So with that said, we're going to go to this, my 2022 protest. Ding, 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 ding. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who's ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I would like to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, about this in cowboy boots. Who wears it better? It will be me, but that's okay. You're a city boy. I don't expect that much out of your boot wearing acumen. So I give you a pass on that. Okay. So with that said, everybody have a great day. No matter what's coming down the pike, be at peace, because God's going before us. We don't have to worry. We don't have to be all kinds of crazy. We can sit there and watch it and see what's going on and make a thoughtful, non-emotional response to what's going on. That's important. And you know what? You go out there and look at your neighbors. You know what you can do today? I'm going to give you a task. I'm delegating taking back the world from Satanists. Go out with a smile. When you go to the store, smile and fake it till you freaking make it. Okay. If you're upset about something, fake it till you make it. Hi, having a great day? Yeah, me too. I'm working on lawsuits today and it's coming, right? But all of those little acts that we do on a daily basis, they all add up. And remember to take care of yourselves too, because we're going through a very stressful time for everyone, an unprecedented time of change. That's okay. It needed to change. We cannot live in a system the way that we become accustomed to. It's like a dog going back to its vomit, which is what it talks about in the Bible. Don't be that dog. Okay. Don't be the dog. And so we need to go forward and realize that God is going before us. And with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to bring on the crazy people that I've met and I've come to absolutely love, that I'm fighting with the DNR with. And so tomorrow we've got my DNR buds, my DNR fighting peeps that will be on tomorrow. And we're going to absolutely put this group of thug criminals in check. We do not agree to anything you're doing right now. A bunch of liars, cheats, and thieves. That's all I got to say. Stay on the line, Greg, and we're going to talk. This is when the conversation even gets more interesting. Someday I'll leave the camera rolling, but liars, cheats, and thieves, you're on notice.